Good morning. About halfway through my walk, somewhere around 5,000 steps. Just coming up on the spot where I like to do this. And we'll have a little bit of a chat for the next 10-15 minutes. I got to start with a correction. My last video, I mentioned Quebec separation and their referendums, and I gave incorrect dates. The actual dates for the two referendums for Quebec, the first one occurred in 1980 and the second one occurred in 1995. That's going to happen. Look, I'm out in the middle of the park walking on a trail. I can remember that things did happen. I don't often remember exactly when. So we're going to have this at the beginning of a video. If I made a mistake in the previous one and I caught it, I'll bring it up here. I got more questions about the question. This idea that we're going to have a referendum so that we can have a referendum and the impacts that's going to have for us. So let's talk about that a little bit. In particular, I want to get to instability. I mentioned that last video. For 10 years, the Liberal government was pretty much anti-pipeline. There's no arguing that. There were factions of them that were anti-resource extraction. No arguing that either. For the past year, I don't see any of that. I see regulations are getting, if not completely repealed, they are being severely adjusted to support a future pipeline between Alberta and the West Coast to get water, oil to tidewater. But now we got this question. It was put forth by the Alberta government. Now, is it asking for direct separation? No, it's not. But it is absolutely saying that we're going to have this really uncomfortable conversation that makes investors nervous. And it's almost like we're deliberately trying to extend it. We're not necessarily putting it off to talk about once we get the legal ramifications set up. No, we're just going to keep talking about it. And it's kind of like, I keep coming back to the divorce reference because really there's nothing that really matches as clearly as that does. It's like coming home and telling your spouse, I'm really unhappy and I think I might want a divorce. And I think we should have conversations about what that would look like. Now picture that going on at your kitchen table. And picture how much chaos that throws into your life. For what? You're having an uncomfortable conversation that maybe does have to be had. But you're deliberately setting it up in a manner where you're going to linger over it. And that's going to create nothing but strife. If you want to build a pipeline, and right now, if I had to guess, I'd say the odds are really high. Federal government is on board with a pipeline. Provincial government, definitely on board with a pipeline. Still haven't heard about investors yet. A pipeline is going to cost, well, TMX originally was supposed to be 7 or 8 billion. And by the time the federal government was done, and let's not forget that, Trudeau actually resulted in TMX expansion, like him or not. By the time you're all done with cost overruns that happen in big projects and inflation and whatnot, a pipeline from Alberta to Tidewater, well, TMX wound up being like 30 billion or something like that. I expect that a new one going across, let's split the difference, and you're looking 15 to 20 billion. Wild ass guess. I don't know. I'm not an engineer. But let's carry on with that. We need somebody to come up with $15 to $25 billion to build a pipeline. We're having this conversation about whether we should entertain the idea as to whether we should become an independent country and separate from our old country. This new pipeline route, no matter how they draw it, at least 60% of the goddamn pipe is going to be in the old country. Now, if I got $15 billion and I want to invest in a pipeline, but I'm looking and I'm going, well, it's going to take me 5 to 7 years to build it. It's going to take all the money I got, or all the money I convince people to loan me. And I got this country is talking about, well, you know, maybe we should just cease to be part of this overall deal. What happens to my investment during that conversation? Or worse, at the culmination of that conversation? I can't just assume everything's going to be rosy. Not as an investor, I can't. Not if I got half a brain in my head. I have to look at the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, and then I have to try and figure out what the likely scenario is. So best case, the folks that want to remain in Canada win this vote in October, and everybody says that's all fine and dandy. Okay, what was the split? Because in every separation referendum that I've seen so far, Quebec still has people talking about it. They're talking about doing another one. The issue doesn't really die. If they lose resoundingly, they're quiet for 5 or 10 years while they're trying to build up a new list of reasons to do what they want to do. If you hit 48%, nothing changes. They just keep squawking because they're right on the edge. They're energized. A long time ago, I was with a union, and the worst vote you could have was 40 to 55%, because it wasn't strong enough to give you a strong mandate for what you wanted to do, or it wasn't quite enough to say that this is just something we shouldn't pursue at this time. You need clear direction. So I got all this money. I want to put it into a pipeline, and I'm looking, and now the questions come. Okay, so what happens if they decide they're going to pursue this? Well, for the next 2-3 years, you're going to have haggling with the government and trying to figure out the legal question to build the second question as to whether we should actually separate. What happens if the separation guys win? We're going to go straight to this second question. Now my money is at higher risk, because now the question is starting to get more clear. Are we going to separate or not? 60% of my investment is in the old country. 40% is in this wannabe new country, which has no monetary policy, which has no regulatory system set in place yet aside from the old provincial ones. And you're going to have this acrimony between the old country and the new country. What's going to happen with that? Because I might own the pipeline, but BC owns the ground on their side. Alberta owns the ground on their side. Alberta's not likely to screw with my investment, but BC, being a separate country now, isn't going to profit massively off of this pipeline that goes to their coast. The odds are really high. It's that they're going to screw with it. They're going to come up with legislative reasons, whatever. Somebody's going to walk up to a pipe in the middle of the night, close a valve, or destroy it. I don't have control over that as the investor, so I don't want to put my money into this thing. We ask these questions, and at the same time, we're trying to convince somebody to put $10 billion, $20 billion into infrastructure. while we're actively talking about screwing with the systems that allow that infrastructure to operate in a functional and efficient manner. I don't see it. I don't know why she's asking the question. Because if I can see it as the dummy who used to work in the oil sands, she must see that. Danielle Smith runs around and talks about how the federal government is changing, how Alberta is winning. We're doing the right thing. We're getting what we want. I don't necessarily disagree with that. But then she turns around and says, and now I'm going to start this conversation that's going to scare away investment. She's still looking for a proponent for this pipeline. I got news for you. Alberta is not going to build a pipeline through BC. The feds are highly unlikely to build another pipeline through BC. We need a private proponent. Nobody is putting their private money into this mess that we're in. And if they are, as a small investor, if I had my retirement savings invested in a fund that was messing around in the middle of all this separation crap, I'd pull it, because that's my money. And I have the same questions. So yeah, the question on a question thing, it baffles me. It really does. It baffles me. Why we would do this and what we would gain from it. That's enough of a ramble for this morning, I suppose. I'm going to carry on to work. I've already walked twice around this place, which is more than I usually do. But you folks have a wonderful day. Looks like the sun's going to be out. It's supposed to be up around 25 degrees. Don't get a sunburn. Make sure you drink your fluids. Take care.